and welcome to another episode of Faith and Reason. I want to sincerely apologize for the break in bringing episodes your way. It was not deliberate, and I appreciate every single person that took time out to reach out and find out exactly what was causing the delay in bringing episodes. Now that I am back with this episode, the hope and the plan is to be consistent even more than before the break happened in bringing you episodes. So let's get straight into this. On our previous episodes, we had started a new series on the Bible, and it was important that we talked about the Bible because before the series, I had spoken variously on different issues and explained my viewpoint from the Bible. I had given the Christian position on so many things, basing our authority on the Bible. And I thought it was important to take time out to explain why the Christian position is always assured on the Bible. Why do Christians take the Bible so seriously? Why do Christians think they can believe in a book that's supposed to be ancient? So in the first episode of this series, we talked about the languages of the Bible, looked at exactly how the Bible shaped up, what languages the Bible was put in the formation of the Bible. And then on the second episode, we looked at the Old Testament, focused on the Old Testament, looked at how it shaped up over the years, exactly how we came to get it. The anonymous authors that contributed to the Old Testament, the popular names that gave the Old Testament its flavor, and on and on and on. Today, after talking about the Old Testament books, I think it's only fair that we talk about the New Testament on this episode. So basically, we are going to talk about how we got the New Testament. As a backdrop, when I was in high school, I, as of now, used to be an avid reader. One of the books I read when I was in high school was titled The DaVinci Code by Dan Brown. Amazing book, really. I said that in high school and I still say it now. Very interesting plot. I read the book, as a way of entertainment. I thought it was great, and just moved on from it. Except I began to pick up rumors, that the book was, getting a lot of attention, and it was getting attention for the same reason I thought it was just, a great read for entertainment. The plot that Dan Brown talks about in the book seemed to have raised a few eyebrows, and people had started making the book get viral. In the book, he posits that the books of the Bible, of the books of the New Testament, so to speak, were not agreed upon until the 4th century. So we are talking about the 300s, 300 AD, in that period, and that the books were selected from a group of other books that presented Jesus Christ, in different perspectives. He goes on to say that the group of Christians that met to decide on these books suppressed books that presented Jesus in human forms in favor of books that presented Jesus in purely divine, aspects. And so he's basically saying that the defining point for Christianity was the 4th century, where, you have a group of men meeting in councils, the Council of Laodicea, the Council of Rome, etc. And they are declaring books that present Jesus in human terms as heretical. And, sealing all of this was one man called Athanasius, who gave out a list of books that the church should stand by and agree that these books are the accepted books for the New Testament. If anybody came up with another list, that list was supposed to be heretical. Basically, that's the point, the plot, that the story that you get from the DaVinci Code plot. Now, never mind that the book had a novel written on the cover. Never mind that it falls into the historical fiction category. And because it's talking about something about the Christian faith, it was necessary to take time to separate history from fiction, before making any claims. Critics of the Christian faith ran with these claims. They insisted that there was an agenda to create Jesus in a certain light and make a religion out of him to influence masses, to control people, and that's how we got the New Testament. Now, What really is the truth? Did people come together to decide what books Christians should have in their New Testament? And was Emperor Constantine, very influential in setting the agenda of the Christian faith? Now, the DaVinci Code is false in the claims that it makes. And for me, I insist that it gets away because it says it's a novel. It says it's a novel. It's really the critics who base their arguments on this book that I have an issue with. How are you getting to raise arguments against the Christian faith from what is supposed to be a novel? But then, if we say the Da Vinci Code and the claims it makes about the Christian faith are false, we are still left with the question, how did we get the New Testament? So, in the episode on the Old Testament, we said that the books of the Old Testament were fine-tuned over a period of thousands of years. For the New Testament, scholars and historians say that the books were completed within 40 to 60 years of one another. Now, the New Testament is made up of 4 Gospels, which are basically biographical accounts of Jesus. And then you've got the Acts of the Apostles. The Acts of the Apostles covers the first 30 or so years of the church. Apostles is a term that means the sent out ones. Okay, so Acts of the Apostles basically means the acts of the sent out ones, the ones who were sent by Jesus, And after the Gospels and the Acts of the Apostles, you basically have letters written by these apostles to churches. These churches are basically communities of Christians scattered in various places. And the letters that these apostles write are called epistles. So the Apostle Paul, who is a great guy in the Christian space, has 13 letters written out to these churches. And in the New Testament, his letters are not arranged alphabetically or chronologically, as in according to when he wrote them. Rather, Paul's letters are arranged in the New Testament from the longest to the shortest. Okay, and then you've got another letter from an unknown author. You've got letters from Jude. You've got letters from James. You've got letters from John. You've got letters from Peter. And then the last book of the New Testament is the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation basically uses vivid imagery. It uses powerful metaphor and is set to encourage Christians regarding Christ's victory, his final victory, even in the face of demonic bullying. So these are the books of the New Testament. Now, there were many books circulating around the time that these books that have been accepted in our New Testament were written or were also being passed around in the churches. We've got the Shepherd of Hermas. We've got the Gospel of Thomas. We even have the Gospel of Judas. Okay? So how did these books, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, for example, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Thomas, the Shepherd of Hermas, how did these books not make it into the New Testament? How did the books we have make it into the New Testament? Now, there are 3 essential ways in which books of the Old Testament were recognized and accepted by the early church. 3 essential ways. These ways are apostolicity, general orthodoxy, and Catholicity. I take them again. Apostolicity, general orthodoxy, and Catholicity. Now, what do I mean by these terms? The first one, which is apostolicity, basically means apostolic authorship. And by apostolic authorship, they mean that book that purports to be a book for the New Testament or for the church had to have been written by someone who walked with Jesus or someone who had a direct encounter with Jesus. Apostolic authorship also means that the book of the New Testament should have been written under the supervision or the stamp of approval of someone who was an apostle. If the book did not meet this criteria, the early church would reject the book. So that's what you have for apostolicity or apostolic authorship. The second point, which is general orthodoxy, basically means that that book of the New Testament should have its content aligning with the general counsel of God or the revelation of God in the scriptures, which mainly was the Old Testament for them. So if the book was making claims against what the apostles had thought or what the scriptures were saying, that book was going to be rejected. It was not going to introduce any new revelation of God. To them, the New Testament book had to follow in line with the general counsel of God in the Old Testament. Now, basically, what you have in the New Testament is a faithful exegesis of the Old Testament. The concepts in the Old Testament have been faithfully exegeted to give us the New Testament. Nothing from, anywhere has just been put in the New Testament. Then you've got universality or Catholicity, which is the third point I actually made. Catholicity, which was that the churches at the time, the churches spread in various locations, the church of Ephesus, the church of Jerusalem, the church of Thessalonica, the church of Carthage, and on, should have accepted the book as authoritative. So you've got these three criteria. The criteria of apostolic authorship or apostolicity. You've got the criteria of general orthodoxy or aligning with the counsel and revelation of God in the Old Testament. And then you've got the criteria of universal acceptance by these churches. If the book did not meet any one of these criteria, the churches were not going to accept them. Now, I can hear a lot of people coming up with questions. Two of the questions are going to be, how then did Paul have his letters in the New Testament, since Paul did not walk with Jesus? Or how did the letter to the Hebrews get accepted in the New Testament, since we do not know who wrote it, and that it could have been written by anyone who was not an apostle? Now, here are answers I'm going to proffer. Now, I think Paul's encounter with Jesus on the way to Damascus is very pivotal. It is very crucial to the shaping of the church, which is why it is mentioned more than once in the New Testament. When Paul has that encounter with Jesus, Jesus tells Paul that he is being persecuted by Paul. And Jesus goes on to give Paul a mission right there in that encounter. Paul becomes a sent out one right there. But more importantly is a verse from the New Testament. It is written by another apostle, at least someone who actually walked with Jesus, called Peter. In 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 15 and 16, something interesting is written. Now, here's what Peter is saying. He said, also, regard the patience of our Lord as salvation, just as our dear brother Paul has written to you according to the wisdom given to him. He speaks about these things in all his letters. There are some things hard to understand in them. The untaught and unstable will twist them to their own destruction, as they also do with the rest of the scriptures. Now, this is interesting. Peter is implying, away from the light-hearted point that Paul's letters are hard to understand. He's implying that Paul's letters are held on the same level as the Old Testament scriptures. Paul's letters were regarded by the early church apostles as authoritative as scripture. So, if the early church apostles regarded Paul's letters as authoritative or as scripture, we really cannot fight against why it has been accepted in the New Testament canon. And then to the letter to the Hebrews. Now, the letter to the Hebrews is accepted by the early church, and it aligns with the general counsel of God because it is comprehensively, exhaustively Christological in its content, really. but we do not know who wrote the letter to the Hebrews. Now, here is it for me. It is very possible that we are the ones that do not know who wrote the letter to the Hebrews. It is very possible that because the early church accepted the letter to the Hebrews as, authoritative or as a book of the New Testament, they knew the author. Just because we do not know the author doesn't mean the early church did not know. So that is a distinction, that's a possibility, we should open ourselves to. So there you have the three criteria and then the backdrop to it. Now, by 180 AD, which is, just before the end of the 2nd century, we had a canon in place. Now, a canon simply means a measure or a rule, the standard by which something is judged. So when we say New Testament canon, it is the standard by which the New Testament church judges revelation, basically. So we say the canon has been closed. You would hear that a lot in church. And we want to say that the standard for measuring what is revelation has been closed, so that no one can bring us new revelation from God. What we have is exhaustive, is comprehensive to reveal God to us. Now, the canon was in place by 180 AD. A canon was in place by the early church. That canon had all 4 Gospels. It had all 13 letters from Paul. It had the letters of Jude, and then the letters of John and the book of Revelation. About 20 years later, the churches would add 1 Peter and then 1 John to the canon. The Eastern Church would later accept the letter to the Hebrews, and then the Western Church would also come to accept the book of Revelation. So you really see that the early church is moving in some consensus or in some deliberation concerning these books as the years go, as early as the 2nd century. So what is happening in the 4th century, in the councils of Laodicea, the councils of Rome, the councils of Carthage, is really not church fathers coming together to decide what should be the New Testament for the church, but rather to guard against other books in circulation getting to be viewed as authoritative. Because there were so many books in circulation, books that were arguing that they were inspired, books that were arguing that they were to be treated as authoritative for Christian instruction and Christian living, And so what these fathers were going to do was to pass the books through the tests, the criteria that we had mentioned. They were going to pass them through the criterion of apostolic authorship, the criterion of general orthodoxy, the criterion of acceptance by these churches. And if the books failed these tests, they were rejected and banned, treated as heretical. If they passed the test, they were definitely going to be put in the New Testament. And after that, they then had to close the canon. That meant that no other book, with sinister agenda could pass as authoritative and therefore lead people astray. So what the council was doing really was safeguarding against heresy. They were safeguarding against manipulation. They weren't about controlling people or setting an agenda to influence the masses under the auspices of Emperor Constantine. Okay, so there you have it. That's how come we came to have the New Testament. Just a few decades after the death of Jesus, books, letters are circulating among communities of Christians known as churches. Okay, they are not coming up with novel ideas. They are just confirming, or they are just affirming the lordship of Jesus that these churches are already confessing. And you go on and you find out that the early church uses 3 factors or 3 criteria, which are the criteria of apostolic authorship, general orthodoxy, and universal acceptance by the churches, to recognize and accept books and letters as authoritative and fit for the New Testament. What the councils did in the 4th century was basically to seal the books up as the churches had already agreed, and not to set an agenda as portrayed in the DaVinci Code by Dan Brown. In the next episode of Faith and Reason, we are going to look at why we can trust the Bible to be what the original authors wrote and not something that has been tampered or changed to fit an agenda. This has been Faith and Reason, where we discuss issues of faith, theology, and apologetics from the Christian perspective. Share this video, share your comments, and stay tuned for the next episode. Faith and Reason, because the Christian faith reasons.